I set out this week with the intent to come here and give some practical advice as well as some philosophical ponderings about how to truly love ourselves. Yet, the more I sat with this idea and let it marinate, the more I kept returning to this other idea of loneliness. If you're here, I'm sure your world is filled with self help, self love, self trust, high self worth content, videos helping us to reinvent ourselves, to become unrecognizable. I have a lot to say about that one, but I'll save it for another time. Basically, to become the best versions of ourselves. But they're a means to what end? Might not be talked about often, it's not a hot buzzword, but I think there's an intricate connection between self love and a sense of belonging. Because on the surface, all of us here doing the work is in a way meant to make ourselves a sturdier containment. What I mean by this is it feels like sometimes the work that we're doing is meant for us to become more self reliant, self regulating, self sustaining. Because when we fail to find love in all the wrong places, where else could we return but back home to ourselves? But I'm guessing that the reason you're here wanting to learn more about self love isn't the fact that you want to become so self reliant and independent in a self sustaining system where you don't need the outside world. Instead, you're here because you want to learn what it means to love yourself and have high self worth so that you can be more selective. You want to love yourself so fully so that you make the right choices for yourself, so that you stop beating yourself up and that you can actually go after your goals and your dreams and stop wasting your precious time, energy, and resources on people and things that don't contribute to your life. Loneliness is a common human experience. A study of 20,000 people in the United States found that 46% reported feeling lonely sometimes or always, and only 27% feel as if they belong to a group. A 2017 survey in Britain found that over 9 million people reported feeling often or always lonely. And the funny thing with loneliness is that we feel alone, even in our loneliness, as if it's unique only to us. So I hope that these statistics help shed a light on this matter and for you to know that truly you're not alone in your loneliness. In the book Polyvagal Exercises for Safety and Connection, the author cites from another study. When there is ongoing misattunement, when ruptures aren't recognized and repaired, the autonomic experience of persistent danger shapes the system away from connection and into patterns of protection. Loneliness is a subjective experience. It emerges not from the objective facts of social isolation, but out of a perception of social isolation. In other words, loneliness or feeling a lack of belonging is not necessarily circumstantial, but it is an internal state of being. It's a feeling that comes from the inside. And in other words, if you do not learn to truly love yourself, if there is this abyss in your heart, no matter how much you are loved factually, objectively, you may never feel it. And this is why I do believe that all roads lead back to the self. At least this is the starting place. I am someone who by choice and circumstance has gone through a lot of changes. Moving abroad, living in multiple different cities, careers ending and beginning. And in 2022, I was in between places, in between jobs. I decided to seek out a therapist and I went into it thinking it was going to be something completely different. I really had my head up in the clouds at that time. I used BetterHelp, who is also the sponsor of today's video, because it was honestly the most accessible platform. And I found a therapist on there that helped me in a way that I did not imagine. He helped really ground me and focus on the foundations of what I was going through at the time, the basic essentials. And I was able to get back on my feet and embrace change in a much more practical way. My time with him was incredibly valuable, which is why I'm so excited that today's video is sponsored by BetterHelp. BetterHelp connects you with a licensed therapist who has years of experience helping people like you yourself who might be going through the same thing. And you can do it from your phone or computer via text, phone calls, or video chats. Let BetterHelp connect you to a therapist who can support you all from the comfort of your home. Visit betterhelp.com/diagen during sign up and receive a special discount on your first month. I wanted to talk about loneliness first before we talked about self-love, because if you're on this journey of self-development, seeking self-love, self-trust, confidence, etc., we sometimes inadvertently put ourselves in isolation. And I want us to remember that the true practice, the true embodiment of all these things and concepts comes from real life, real time experiences. I've searched to the moon and back. In the previous video, I've said that it's taken me over a decade, but truly, I mean, it's been over 2 decades. I've searched for the moon and back for a magic formula to take away my own heartache and discomfort. And I've achieved a lot of things throughout this journey, but I don't mean it in a way of I've climbed Mount Everest. What I mean is I stand on a hill looking backwards at all the other versions of myself on this journey with so much compassion, gratitude, sympathy, and a little bit of pride. Depending where you are on your own journey to self-love, the practices might look a little bit different. Whether you're in survival mode, simply trying to honor and love yourself by meeting your basic needs, or if you're in thriving mode, ready and empowered to make changes and to rewrite your patterns, self-love is not going to magically show up from you trying to convince yourself that you're worthy of being loved, but from showing you're worthy of unconditional love. I took this from a book called The Art of Possibility, and the rule number 6, it's an arbitrary number. It can be any number you want, but it's called the rule number 6. And basically the idea is to stop taking ourselves so seriously. But rather than thinking of it in a stop taking yourself so seriously way, it's more like lighten up, take yourself lightly. I've struggled with this a lot because, like I've mentioned in previous videos before, I'm quite dramatic in my head. So sometimes I take myself very seriously. And especially when we're doing this work on ourselves, it's really easy to take ourselves way too seriously. At the beginning of working on self-love, we tend to dredge up a lot of our past. And the reason is because we need to figure out the why. Why are we here in the first place? Typically, we look to our past, to our parents, our caregivers, and look for evidence of reasons why we are where we are today, and patterns that did not promote self-love, that was not very unconditionally loving. But if we remain there in the past, then we are forever a powerless victim chained to our past. And past is something that we actually, unfortunately, cannot change. But our power of recognition and awareness becomes a practical tool to move forward when you realize that the power actually is in the here and now. We can't change the past, but we can change the future. And the first step to self-love and to accepting and embracing ourselves fully is to make peace with our past. Accepting yourself doesn't mean you think your shit smells like roses. Using humor and actually getting to a point where you're able to laugh at yourselves at the things that you used to be embarrassed about is a really great way to help us embrace our imperfections. If we can learn to laugh at our quirks and imperfections without feeling shame or inadequacy, then we allow ourselves to be loved as imperfect human beings. Taking ourselves lightly also allows us to be more authentic. It's funny, I've advocated for not seeking for external validation, but it happens. We're human and we are social creatures. But our validation should never come exclusively from external affirmations. However, what is helpful is other people typically tend to be a mirror for us to recognize what parts of us we tend to hide, ignore, or dismiss. Parts of us that we have not been able to make peace with. Parts of us that we're still at war with. Taking yourself lightly is at this interesting intersection of being more playful and less dramatic. It's both becoming an adult and a child at the same time. When we stop taking ourselves so seriously, we're also less critical. Can you imagine working on self-love and blaming yourself for not being more loving? I am still someone in many ways that tend to swing to the extremes, but I find and have realized throughout my own journey that the more I am able to stand in neutral ground and witness all parts of myself with genuine compassion, the more I am able to be graceful and loving to all parts of me. And all those parts are deserving of unconditional love. The confident, joyful, self-assured version of me, the one who is fearful and doubtful at times, the heartbroken, lonely version of me, and also the hopeful and optimistic version of me. And all parts of you are all equally deserving of your love and attentiveness. Self-love truly begins with self-compassion. And this phrase, self-compassion, used to be just a buzzword for me. I found that inner child healing practices are really helpful, and I do have a full video on this if you're interested. Self-compassion does not mean self-enabling. If you're someone that has been in your own comfort bubble for the last few months, then the self-loving thing to do is to push yourself out of your comfort zone. But what I'm talking about here in terms of self-compassion is when you're beating yourself up despite the fact that you've been trying and you're getting frustrated with yourself because you've been trying. If you're someone who has always prioritized the needs of others before your own, or if you're typically a people pleaser, you might have unintentionally become a martyr. And unless you're actually a saint, this might have led to bitterness or resentment in the past. I've noticed that people who has this pattern or experience, when they first start to rewrite their patterns, they tend to swing really hard to the other way, meaning they start saying no all the time. They're in this me first, I have to do what I need to do, forget everybody else mode. And I think that's absolutely fine. If you are someone who used to be on the other camp of things and you're not used to saying no, you're not used to putting yourself first, even if it feels a little extreme, I think it is okay if you need to do that swing to the other side initially. However, as time progresses and you find yourself on steady ground, I think it's also good to reflect on in what ways have you gone a little too extreme and how can you find your way back to a more grounded center. Self-love is having an honest conversation with yourself and saying, I know you've done the work, I know you're trying, and you're still not where you want to be, but how lucky am I to be here with you? Your persistence and resilience and your willingness to try again and again, to begin again, I love you for that. Thank you. When I say become your own best friend, I mean it in a strange, literal way. A lot of my most significant healing happened in real time when I was able to separate myself from myself. So you start treating yourself as a separate entity. It is helpful oftentimes because we're so incredibly attached to our own experience, feelings, that putting yourself outside of yourself, treating yourself as someone that you love, maybe a younger version of you, or maybe a best friend that you would bury bodies for. Whenever you're feeling less than or feeling underaccomplished and you're beating yourself up for overreacting or reverting back to old patterns, how would you show up for someone that you love, someone who is a best friend? How would you show up for someone who has always been there with you and for you? Who else has been with you the longest except for you? How would you comfort a younger version of you who does not know everything that you know today? And I don't mean you have to coddle them and enable them and go delulu with them, but how could you become an anchor and an inspiration for them in a moment of challenge? And as you begin this journey, sometimes it's going to feel like you're taking 2 steps forward, 1 step back, and sometimes it feels like you're taking 3 steps back, but it's completely normal. Remember that our nervous system is biologically wired to seek for things and to act out of things that feels familiar, because familiar means safe. Our unconscious is not seeking for what's good for us all the time, even though we consciously know what is good for us. It is typically seeking to stay within the perimeter of safety and comfort and familiarity. In my humble opinion, one of the most important ways of truly loving yourself is showing yourself and sticking to the commitments that you've made so that you can foster self-trust. This can look like holding yourself accountable when you said you wanted to add more movement in your week, but it's beyond those things too. Self-trust is creating a sense of safety within yourself to show yourself that you can brave any storm, no matter how difficult. And how do we do this? We began by working on expanding our own capacity to be with difficult and challenging feelings, to be present with them when they come up, and to allow joyful moments when they happen to linger just a little bit longer. The next time an uncomfortable feeling arises, see it as an opportunity to try a different approach. It's an experiment and it can be fun. First, you can recognize and call out that you're in a moment of discomfort. Like, ooh, this feeling that I have right now, I don't love it. But instead of abandoning post right away and seek for other means of escape or distraction, see if you can stay with it just a little bit longer, even if it's just for 3 to 5 long breaths. Show yourself that you are willing to stay here, even when things feel icky. Doing this literally shows yourself that you're worthy of being loved, of being given attention to not be abandoned. If you're great at upturning your entire life and immediately jumping and sticking to something new, that's wonderful. But if you've tried to do that and you've failed in the past, Try breaking down your goals into achievable, smaller steps for you to acknowledge and track and pat yourself on the back. These realistic, smaller incremental goals may not be flashy and exciting, but they're necessary because our brains need to see and experience and believe that we can change in order to continue changing. Just as elusive as the word love itself when we think of it in the context of a romantic partner, I think developing or feeling genuine love for ourselves is not a state of mind. It's a choice that we make every single day. Loving yourself comes from learning how to respect yourself, getting intimate with the different versions and different states of being that is all within you. Self love is also actively challenging yourself and working on expanding your own capacity to hold your own feelings and to interface with challenges out there in the real world. It's about learning to trust yourself and to trust that you will be here for you when all else fails. How can we demand other people and tell them that their actions mean more than their words when we ourselves try to sit here and convince ourselves to love ourselves with just our minds? Whatever your own journey to self-love looks like, only you know what it is that has to be done. Only you know what actions you have to take and what changes you have to make. I actually have a really exciting announcement to make. It's something that I've been wanting to do for a really long time, which is to start a community for like minded, like spirited people. And recently I read a comment on one of my videos, and this person basically expressed, in my opinion, a sense of feeling loneliness, like whatever it is that they're going through, they feel like it's special and unique, exclusive to them. And I think one component that's missing in these videos is that I am speaking at you. There's no way to engage with each other. So I've decided to start the Treehouse Collective. It's, I guess you can say, a passion project, but it's one that I've wanted to do for years now, honestly. So it's pre-launch stage, and if you're interested, there's a wait list. It's called the Founders Circle wait list. Basically, anyone that's signed up on that wait list, whenever the treehouse is fully built and ready to be live, you will receive the first update. And if you are on that list, you will get an exclusive discount for the membership price. It's going to be affordable because I know what it's like when you're already struggling to deal with so many things in life and you're just looking for that extra support. You're looking for that connection, accountability. So it's something that I hope people can really take advantage of, and that we kind of find our treehouse club and really heal and grow and chase goals together. The waitlist is going to be linked down below where you can join. And if you have any questions at all, just let me know. Again, this is just a preliminary waitlist. You're not signing up for anything yet because we're still building the treehouse, so to speak. So, but whenever that's live, I'm so excited to meet all of you that are hoping to be a part of this community. And thank you so much for watching today's video, and I'll see you in the next one.